Honoring Black History. Tonight we visit Central State Hospital, America's first mental hospital for African Americans. We'll take a closer look this evening beyond the symbol of segregation and outdated attitudes. Virginia's mental health system is America's oldest, established in the late 1700s. The royal governor of Virginia, Francis Fauquier, drew attention to the topic of mental illness and the need for public response. However, some were considered to be immune to mental illness.
And initially, African American people were considered not to have a capacity for reason. And if they didn't have a capacity for reason, they could not lose it. Therefore, blacks were considered to be immune from problems of mental illness.
King Davis was commissioner of the Virginia Department of Mental Health during the early 90s in the Wilder administration. He's currently a professor at the University of Texas at Austin.
The persons who were believed to suffer most from mental illness in Virginia were white men of wealth. Because of the assumption that was made was that the stress of trying to make a living and making a profit was such that a person was likely to lose their mental bearings. Well, the only people who were likely to have lost their mental bearings were well-off white males.
The irony that having and managing property might be more stressful than being property was lost on early Americans.
As long as blacks were enslaved, I think they would have been considered immune from these problems.
Virginia expanded the mental health system to include black people, anticipating a rush of mental illness among freed slaves after the Civil War.
The hospital opened in 1868 as the Central Lunatic Asylum for the Colored Insane.
Central State's original campus was in Church Hill. It moved to Petersburg in 1885, and as all things then, was segregated.
Until the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was passed, almost every psychiatric facility in the United States was segregated.
Central State was separate and unequal.
Central State Hospital got the short end of the stick budgetarily. Whether or not that made an impact on services is still in dispute.
Davis makes an unexpected case, though, for the facility.
This was, in fact, an extraordinarily warm and caring environment. Didn't mean that people received the most outstanding service, but they received the most outstanding care. The ward staff, the nurses, the ward technicians, all black. There were religious services that were here. Virginia State's band performed here, as did high schools.
So did America's top black entertainers.
So whenever Louis Armstrong, Ella Fitzgerald, Lena Horne, lots of others, gospel singers who came to Virginia State, they came to Central State as well, and they performed.
And the facility stands out for another reason.
Not only was it the first mental institution in the United States for African Americans, they kept every scrap of paper, every record. We are able to tell you the major diagnoses of everybody who entered here. We have 14 characteristics on every person that was admitted.
With more money, Davis hopes to use Central State's records to compare how doctors diagnosed patients then compared to now.
Under Virginia law, relatives can have access to the data. We do genealogical workshops all over the state so that we can share with family members information about their relatives who were here.
Davis describes Central State's legacy as magnificent.
The atmosphere that was here was of people who cared about the people from their community.
You'll find more images of Central State in our Honoring Black History page at WRIC.com. And don't forget to join us this Sunday afternoon at 2:30. We'll have an encore presentation of our Honoring Black History special.